can easily go back to when you could say the cheque's in the post and gain another week's credit or suffer another week's cash flow problem. I can also remember how hard it was to reconcile my business bank statement, let alone my private account. No ATMs, no apps, no BACS. What a cobweb banking world we lived in then. And some would love to still be there, but change is inevitable and can be powerful, and none more so than in the banking world. In many ways, the banking power is back to the people. You select who you want to be your banking provider, and it's easier than ever to move to another bank. And now there are the so-called challenger banks emerging, promising even better service and benefits. As ever, here at the Meet the Leader show, we aim to be at the forefront of news for you. And so I'm delighted to introduce you to the CEO of one of those fledgling banks. From Recognise, it's a warm welcome to Jason Oakley. Welcome, Jason.
Malcolm, delighted to be here.
Thank you. Jason, you've got some exciting news of the moment about Recognise. What's the news?
So we've been on this journey since the early part of 2018, but a couple of weeks ago we got basically the license from the regulators to set out on our pathway to be a licensed bank, subject to our capital raise, which we're in the middle of at the moment. So we're on the very cusp of becoming a new SME bank in the UK.
Excellent, exciting. What type of customer is Recognise aiming to support and service?
Okay, well, the origin of our name Recognise was really from the fact that the SME sector, that small and medium-sized sector, so anything from a single-handed window cleaner up to a larger professional service firm, there's a kaleidoscope of businesses in there, really deserve recognition, they deserve a proper service. So on the lending side, we focus only on SME clients. So that's lending debt into businesses and that full spectrum of different sorts of business. On the deposit side, we do retail deposit taking, all up to the financial services compensation limit, which is £85,000. And we also do SME deposit taking. But we're really coming into this market to specifically serve the SME debt space, which we think is very poorly served at the moment.
Recognise is part of the City of London group. What does the group do?
Okay, so City of London Group is actually an AIM-listed entity. It's listed on the stock exchange. Essentially, it's a holding company. It has a number of subsidiary companies underneath. There's 5 trading companies, and it's split into 2 main services. One is serving SMEs, and it already had an SME lending business before we got Recognise up and running. And the other part of the group is home reversion plans. So that's people that effectively sell the house but live in there until they sadly pass or go into a care.
Ah, right. I'm a freeman of the City of London, by the way. I've walked my sheep across the bridge, and I've proudly got my picture on the wall there of it. You've a long history in financial services, and many of your peers would opt now for a safe and secure life. So what was the spark that caused you to want to start Recognise?
Well, I think I'd probably attribute it to the entrepreneurialism and the work ethic of my parents, particularly my father. My father set up his own business. He came from a very modest background. He was a carpenter, but he saw an opportunity to build his double glazing business and building business. And I'm not a typical banker, Malcolm. I've got the grey hair, can't deny that. But I've built and successfully sold 3 businesses. I've been in the banking space for 35 years, but I like to think that I'm an entrepreneur and I happen to be a banker, and I can relate to entrepreneurs. I understand the challenges of meeting payroll, VAT returns, all the red tape businesses have to go through. So I really can empathise, and I'm looking at it from their perspective as well as from building a successful bank.
Yeah, I totally applaud you on that, because being an SME myself, I know how difficult it can be. We seem to have gone from having a choice of maybe 4 big banks to a plethora of new ones. How does Recognise aim to stand out from the rest? What will be your differentiator?
Okay. Well, if we just go back in time for a moment, the 2007-8 crash was a really seismic change. And one of the real downsides, those big banks that you mentioned have got a 90% share of the business banking current account market and over 75% share of the debt market. But since 2007, and that's 13 years, there's just been this ongoing denuding of skills. So those people in the local branches that knew clients, they've been around for many years, the skill set, we've seen really good, profitable, growing businesses forced into call centres where they haven't got a relationship manager, they don't know who to speak to, they've got a need. Well, who do I speak to? You know, I'm used to ringing a call centre for a statement or a balance request. You know, I want to borrow £500,000. I want to borrow £1 million. Who do I talk to? So, you know, we're about serving that client, building that relationship, understanding that business, really getting under the skin of understanding the motivations, and then being responsive and creative and ensuring that we give a great service.
I'm totally with you on the frustration of the call centre. Yeah, that's a story for another interview. When reflecting on my questions for our interview, though, my mind went back, as in my opening piece, to those frustrating banking times. Surely the banks then cannot have claimed to be customer-centric.
No, I don't think, you know, I worked for a big bank, and when I worked for the RBS group, and it was a fantastic place. I did almost 20 years there. And I was very proud to run the RBS and NatWest SME franchise, which was over 1 million businesses. It was a very big franchise. And at the time, there was real intimacy and knowledge. I left that job in 2003. And what I've seen over the intervening years, looking from the outside in, is a focus on job preservation, a focus on cost cutting. They've forgotten what service business is about. It's about serving your client and giving them a great experience and really understanding them. And that's why I think it's such an opportunity for our new bank, because, you know, too many of the big banks now don't serve the client. It's more about, it's an introspective, inward looking, you know, how do I keep my job? How do I keep cutting costs? And what does that mean for the small business owner? A shocking service. You know, there is no service, frankly, and that's our cause. Our cause is to put that right, and our name about recognise. It's about recognising. People forget the backbone of our economy is SMEs. Just 3 quick stats, Malcolm. They're eye-popping. One is that SMEs make up over 50% of gross national product. That's the turnover of the whole of the UK, 2.2 trillion pounds. Secondly, SMEs make up 99% of all employers, 99%, and they make up over 60% of all employment. So as important as, you know, the big blue chips, your BPs, your Shells, your Glasgow, you know, all these, but they still only make up less than 40% of employment. SMEs make up over 60%. And who's shouting for them? Well, that's our job. We're going to give them a fantastic banking service.
Excellent. Now, let's just stick with the traditional banks for a minute. They've had a bad image. Some would say arrogance in the preceding years. Some of it deserved, some of it not. Whilst they are themselves businesses with shareholders, and I fully understand they've got to make profits, do you think the right effort is being made to improve image and reputation?
So we're fortunate in the industry to have UK Finance, which is a trade body, which actually at a macro level, at a relatively high level, they do a good job. But at the very root of this is heal thyself. You know, I again, sadly, have seen a lot of instances where banks have used documentation and covenants and technical reasons to revalue assets, to call in debt. They didn't act in a way that really felt customer-centric to me. Yes, we're in the middle of a crisis, and frankly, we're going to go into another very, very difficult economic period because of COVID. And some of those bad behaviours, you know, why did the politicians feel they needed to ring fence the investment bank from the retail bank? Why have they legislated on remuneration and risk taking? Of course, some of these things were just not acceptable. But for me, it's about, at the root of any service business, banking is no different to any service business, to understand your client, be accessible, be creative, be responsive, and give a great service. If you get those things right, then your reputation is clearly enhanced. The big super tanker banks, they're still in the midst of these massive seismic changes. You know, you've just had HSBC announced 35,000 job losses. They're all going through yet another restructure. And who's forgotten in all of this? The
customer. Yeah, I'm totally with you. As I'm one, my passion is the SME and the micro. Sadly, and all too often, these businesses who themselves are passionate about what they do are averse to getting to grips with their finances, and then they cannot understand it when the bank doesn't support them. Now, we can nod our head to those businesses in silent sympathy, but what advice should we really be giving them? After all, with today's technology, it's easy to take control of your money, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think technology is a big advance. So certainly, if you look at the technology that Recognise is introduced into SME banking, it will be transformative. It will give tools to our clients in terms of budgeting, transparency, etc. If I go back to your question, SMEs, it's an incredibly difficult job. They're time poor, they're spinning loads of different plates. But at the very heart, if somebody said, well, what bit of advice makes the biggest difference? It's managing cash flow. Cash flow is, it's the lifeblood of a business. So one thing that every business entrepreneur needs to become good at is to understand their cash flow management. So to anticipate when money's coming in and to work out what monies are going out, for direct debit, standing orders, regular payments, payroll expenses, or whatever. Because if you look at the COVID-19 now, that's been like a heart attack for a business. You know, suddenly their clients have stopped buying. They've still got fixed costs. They've still got, you know, payroll to meet, even with the furlough. That's obviously helping. So cash flow and understanding cash in and cash out is really the key. I've seen so many businesses, and it seems illogical. I've seen so many profitable businesses go bust because it's not making a profit, it's having the cash flow. Because if you can't meet an obligation when it falls due, you're technically insolvent and your business will fall over. So profitability is important, but the lifeblood, the critical thing is cash flow and understanding how you manage your cash.
I think it's time to repeat that mantra, isn't it? Turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king.
Absolutely spot on. Okay. And it's key. It's absolutely key.
Yeah. How does a prospective personal or business customer select a bank? Is it through recommendation or freebies such as free banking, convenience? What's the key factors?
I think it's driven by different segments. So certainly, if I go back to Metro Bank, Metro had long opening hours. It gave out gifts and they had dog bowls and dog biscuits and lollipops and goodness knows what else. SME is not about gimmicks. SME and entrepreneurs, really the very, very foundation stone is continuity of relationship. I build a relationship with you, Malcolm. I become your banker. It's really frustrating for you if in 12 months' time I get promoted off and somebody else comes in and you start again. And then in a year or 18 months, it happens again and again and again. At the very heart of our proposition, of course, you have to give value for money and transparency in terms of pricing, but the very heart is relationship. So let's assume it's good value for money. We're competitive. We're not the cheapest. We don't pretend to be. We don't want to be the cheapest. But what we will do better than anybody else is create continuity, give you a point of contact that understands you and your business, and then is accessible. One of the frustrating things is that a relationship is good in the good times, but it also needs to be good in the bad times. Every SME I've ever worked with, every single one, no matter how good the business model is, has dips. It's like a roller coaster. You have some really good times, you have some bad times. And the test of relationship is when you're under pressure. your business isn't quite doing what you hoped it was. You know, you've had a restaurant and, you know, you thought, right, I'm coming out of that problem now, and you're in Preston and suddenly you shut again. And you're a family business. There's 4 or 5 people of your family running this restaurant. Suddenly your cash has stopped. You need support. You need help. I think that's the critical thing. It's fine about freebies, but it's a bit gimmicky. For me, it's about continuity. It's about consistency. It's about being there when the proverbial hits the fan, which it does for every SME.
Yeah, I am so in touch with you on that one. You know, we've been in with the same bank for well over 20 years in this business, and I couldn't tell you the name of any person to speak to these days.
Well,
I used to, but then that bank manager that we used to one day turned around to me and said, "Do you know of any jobs, Malcolm? I've just been made redundant."
Well, but I think it's shocking because you're part of a group that is the backbone of the economy. You know, it's basically, they used to say we're a nation of shopkeepers and commerce and consumption. This economy is more consumption-led than pretty well anywhere else in Europe. And you've got to support, you know, it's a bit like, you know, if this is a key, you know, an arm, a limb of your body, and you're letting it wither on the vine, you're not giving it you're not nurturing it and supporting it. I actually think the government and the Chancellor has been very forward looking and proactive in terms of furlough, in terms of the bounce back loan scheme. They've done an awful lot to try to help. But if you haven't got a relationship and you're hitting a second wave or there's more problems and issues, who do you turn to? You know, you need bankers that are in the communities that can help clients, so that you should know. How can you run a business and not know who your point of contact is?
Yep.
Who do you talk to when you have a problem?
Yeah.
It's just
yeah, totally agree with you. You've been in financial services for lots of years and likely seen many changes. What still excites you about the sector, though?
Well, I tell you, the thing I absolutely love, and one of the things is over the years, as you elevate, because I'm a simple Midlands-based lad, you know, there's no crisis, you know, and at the very heart of me, you know, you could cut me open and it would just say customer through it. So what excites me is meeting the client, understanding their story. There's nothing that they're prouder about than their story, whether it's a multi-generational family business, whether it's somebody that's set up 2 or 3 years before, whatever it is, and how they're building this business, the journey they've had. You know, one of the most, you know, some of the most, you know, stories where I feel a sense of real admiration, you know, in the Indian community, where grandpa came over with £10 from Idi Amin, and he literally had £10 and he had to become a bus driver and or sweeping streets or whatever it was. And that entrepreneurialism, he was successful over there. He'd come here with nothing and he built up, and then second generation built up. And then by the time you get to third generation, they've got a multi-million-pound business from nothing. You know, how can you not admire that? That, for me, is a source of inspiration. It's a source of motivation. I love serving customers, and I don't understand why the other banks have forgotten what we're there for.
I'm totally with you again on that one. And next week I'm interviewing a man who came from India with £1,000 and set up a law firm, and now it's in the top 500 in the UK. What a story. Yeah. Let's talk about leadership, the title of this show. You're heading a new team and getting a new brand off the ground. That's always hard. What's your style of leadership? Are you a micromanager, or do you encourage your team members to make decisions themselves?
So I think there are different situations where you need to pivot rather than having one overriding style. I think if there's one overriding style for me, I like to feel, you know, it's very collaborative. You know, I certainly recognise, you know, I recognise that I do not have a monopoly on good ideas, and the team is incredibly talented. So why wouldn't you tap into that skill set and capability? So a more collaborative approach. The other thing I've noticed over many, many years, Malcolm, is the best ideas come from the people closest to the customer, that are touching the customer every day. So if you've got an inverted triangle with the people at the top of the triangle making decisions and not talking to the people interacting with clients, you're missing a trick. I like to invert the triangle. The people who touch the clients are the most important. And me at the bottom of the triangle as CEO, I'm the least important. Actually, it's the people doing the work with the clients that matter the most. So collaboration, inclusivity, encouraging people to constructively challenge. I think it's a great thing. Constructive challenge is a great thing. I'm a big fan of, ask for forgiveness, not permission. So we're a new business. We have to move at pace. We can't look at everything in the finite detail. We're regulated. Obviously, we have to meet our obligations as a regulated entity. But you have to be fleet of foot. We see an opportunity. We look to meet that opportunity to serve clients. So empowerment for me, giving people confidence, giving them license, but also accepting that we make mistakes. And if we learn from them and do a better job the next time, that's a great learning experience. So we can't be 100% right all the time, but that's okay. Don't make the same mistake again. It's all I would suggest.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love that example of great agility that you obviously have put into the business. How hard has the coronavirus crisis impacted the financial sector? And do you think it will be a V-shaped recovery or a long haul with a possible deep recession to also contend with?
So one of the challenging things, I read on this topic, it's an important driver for me in terms of the trajectory of my business and how quickly I grow. And I read a lot of conflicting data. There's lots of different surveys. I think what's pretty clear now, I mentioned earlier that the UK economy is more consumption-led, consumer consumption-led. And that's an issue for us because consumers are not spending the way they were spending. I only have to look, I commuted in to central London this morning from on the overground, and I could count on one hand the people in the compartment. I then come out and I'll go and buy a sandwich in the city, and it's like a ghost town. Now, obviously, London I think is more acute than some of the other areas, but I think generally speaking, consumer spending is down. Yes, online spending is up, but net it's down. What does that mean? I think it means that it'll be more of a U than a V. I think it'll plateau and it'll grow. We're already seeing some signs, some data I'm seeing where at the end of July things started to slow down a bit. Certainly the end of the furlough scheme in October, we've seen data that says a third of businesses are looking at job losses. Different data on unemployment, but it's probably sensible to assume it'll be around 3 million, possibly more. And those people that were consuming are going to consume a lot less, and it all cascades through. So I think we're going to have quite a deep recession. I think because it's not a financial-led recession, it will come out of it quicker, but probably slower than the Bank of England's original forecasts. I think they're possibly still slightly optimistic. But it's an awful thing to say, and let me apologise in advance, but for a new bank coming with no legacy book, COVID has done this scorched earth, and it's probably made entrepreneurs, it's disrupted them, I think, disrupted them a little bit. And thinking, well, have I got a relationship here? Have I got somebody that's really batting in my corner? I don't want to speak to the call centre and, pick perm 1 from 200, whoever picks the phone up. They know nothing about me. They know nothing about my business. So going into that environment with no bad debt issues, the big banks, we're already seeing massive provisions coming out of them. And there's going to be probably 2 or 3 years where they forget about acquisition and they're focused on bad debt and delinquency and issues there. So I actually think it's a good time. The UK economy needs recognised and needs some of our other peers that are going to go into that space, because SMEs need relationships. So I think the economy is going to be difficult. Probably a couple of years of challenge, but it's critical that supplier credit, which will help us, a catalyst to get the economy back on its feet, and we'll certainly be doing everything we can to support that critical sector.
Excellent. And, let me just talk about another whammy that's around the corner. I know the outcome of Brexit is still far from certain, but what would be the best outcome for the benefit of Recognise?
Well, and the benefit of Recognise is what's good for us is what's good for SMEs, because that's our client bank. So, and I think here, this death by a thousand cuts, not quite knowing what's going to happen. Is this in? Is that in? Is this going to happen? Is that, uncertainty drives a lack of investment, short-termism, not growing jobs and footprint. It's kind of becomes, just wait and see, wait and see, wait and see is bad for the economy. So I think whatever the outcome, just give us some certainty and clarity so businesses can plan. Once they know what the solution is it there's a transitional agreement that comes into some kind of ongoing trade agreement with Europe, or is it World Trade Organization rules, or whatever it is? We have the most incredibly creative, flexible SME segment. You've only got to look at COVID, how they've suddenly moved from producing this to producing hand sanitizer or gloves or masks or goodness knows what else. These are entrepreneurs that will very quickly look at the environment and work out a solution. What you don't want is months and months and months of no clarity, because who can plan when they don't know what's going to happen? So it kind of almost doesn't matter what the outcome is, just give us an outcome with a clear roadmap and we can work around it.
Okay, Jason, it's crystal ball time. What's your vision for Recognise in, say, 5 years' time?
Well, by 5 years, I would hope that Recognise is an established brand. It's respected and admired. Principally, it's admired as a very customer-driven bank, where the client, the customer, our SME, is at the very heart of everything we do. And we function for our customers. But also, for me, I would love to be admired around my colleagues, allowing them to be the best they can be, nurturing, growing. A new bank grows at an exponential pace, Malcolm, and it's the most wonderful opportunity for people to grow with them. In a traditional dead man's shoes bank, you're waiting 5 years for your next promotion and then maybe another 10 for your next one. In a new bank, we're growing, and if people are good enough and they've got the appetite and the burn, they can get promoted 2 or 3 times in 5 years. It's a wonderful place. It's very dynamic. There's loads of opportunity. And then I think admired for the respect we pay stakeholders like our regulators and other key people in the environment, and obviously serving our shareholders well. For me, profit is a mere byproduct of fantastic service. We serve our clients, we fulfill their expectations, we exceed their expectations. We'll give a good return for our shareholders. So that I just want to be admired for a great SME bank.
I've got a sneaking feeling in 5 years, Recognise will mean relationship. Jason, enough of the heavy questions. There's no pantomime this year, but I'm going to give you the three wishes instead. What are your 3 wishes for the future of the banking sector?
Well, for me, the one that's bigger than anything is that SMEs, that small business sector, finally gets the recognition they deserve. There's finally, yes, it's not got the big lobby groups or the big corporates, but we finally realise that is the foundation, that's the key for our economic recovery, and we give them the respect and the recognition they deserve. I think the other second wish is that banking, having been in the industry 35 years, when I first joined, it was an industry that I aspired to join, that I felt proud to be part of what was called the Institute of Bankers, to get all my exams. I ended up doing my master's degree, etc., and I was really proud to be a professional in the industry. And that's been tarnished. And being a banker now, you're almost embarrassed to admit it, because of the negativity since the financial crisis. So hopefully, for the industry to be recognised as a key catalyst for the economic recovery of the country. And I think the third one is, you know, I'm getting on now. The grey hair gives it away. So retirement is not imminent, but, you know, in 5 years' time, maybe I will be thinking about that. And for me, I'd love to leave an organisation, an industry that is we leave a legacy for the people that are there to continue the cause of serving our SMEs, who are so critical to the success of our economy.
Jason Oakley, for the first time in my life, I've met a bank manager who's passionate about the customer. Thank you for the interview.
It's been a great pleasure, Malcolm. Thank you for the kind invite.